Hello, everyone. So today we have Leo Maltos and Sarah Girard as presenters. Leo is our business development executive at FinTech. Leo works directly with CPGs, especially emerging brands, to help find ideal solutions for any points across the business. He specializes in financial incentives to help brands move products, increase brand awareness, and develop brand equity. Sarah here is our Solutions Experts Director at FinTech. Sarah serves as she works directly with brand and retail customers to solve their everyday businesses opportunities with data and analytics. So I will leave you with Leo and Sarah, and I hope you enjoy this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Bego, and we are happy to be here today. Hi, Leo.
Hi, Sarah.
And hello to everyone who has joined today. We have what will hopefully be an informative and fun presentation. But before we start, we need to put up this disclaimer. Okay, so here's our disclaimer, and it basically says that we are not giving any legal advice. We're not attorneys. Leo and I do not have our JDs. This presentation is not packaged for individual sale. So now that you know we're not legally allowed to give legal advice, let's move on to our presentation. So today we're going to be talking about how to achieve incentives excellence in a changing market. We're going to go over some things to think about that can help lead to more successful coupon promotions. And we will cover the top 5 questions to ask before running a promotion.
Right, and it was kind of tough just to pick 5. So hopefully we got the right ones. We're just going to go with it and see what happens. Hopefully we don't give any legal advice. And just to set the stage, Sarah, we work on the FinTech side of Inmar. Can you take just a moment to tell everyone what exactly that is?
Yes, I'd love to. So our FinTech Cloud is positioned to help companies navigate the digital transformation era with omni-channel payment and settlement solutions that drive top-line growth and protect margins. At its very core, our FinTech Cloud securely facilitates highly complex financial transactions to enable intelligent and efficient omni-channel commerce. And we provide these services to retailers, brands, financial institutions, along with healthcare companies, and even government entities. A key benefit of our FinTech platform is that we apply advanced analytics to transactional data. So today, jumping into our topic of discussion, we have 5 key things that we're going to cover today. Number 1, we're going to ask ourselves why we're running a promotion and kind of what goals are we after in running that promotion. Secondly, we're going to think about what success looks like for our brand. And that's going to vary between brand, and that's going to vary sometimes even between the shopper marketing teams versus finance teams. So navigating that can be complex. So just defining what success looks like can be super important before entering market with a promotion. We're also going to cover which promotion method makes the most sense. There is so many different options of tactics to enter the marketplace with. So we're going to go through different ones to consider. We're also going to cover how much an offer should be worth. We want to make sure that we're never subsidizing product and never just giving it away, and just being aware of the different things that can happen when different offers are stacked up against each other. And then lastly, to round us out, we're going to discuss when it's the best time to run an offer. Is it seasonally? Is it to run offers when our competition's running offers? So we're going to go through all of the different things to consider there.
Right, and definitely lots to talk about. And while on the surface, some of these kind of seem very basic or apparently and inherently obvious, but give a little bit of thought, and not a full extent to some of these, and they can really end up making the wrong decisions when planning promotions. And I just want to point out, as much as we would love to be able to tell each person who is listening right now exactly what they should do, what the exact offer is, or the exact science behind each of these, it's just not possible. So what we're doing today is just having a conversation. We're talking about each of these, why they are important to consider, and give folks who may not have as much experience running offers some guidance down the path to running a successful offer and campaign in the future.
Okay, so let's jump right in. So Leo, this first one seems a little too easy. Why am I running this promotion? That just seems like it would be kind of obvious, right?
Yeah, maybe so, but maybe not, because let me ask you this. Why would a brand run a promotion? What is the motivation?
Good question, good question. And I do know the answer, but quite often we do hear things like to discount a product so that people will buy more, or maybe because my competitors do it.
I mean, those are valid reasons, but there's, I think, definitely more to it than just that. So setting objectives is definitely key. But first, you need to have an objective. I know it sounds silly, but your objective should probably include, or it shouldn't just be, I just need to run a coupon because that's what other brands do. So what are some of the objectives? So just speaking with about your brand and your brand goals, you might want to have some drivers for trial, or reach certain households or a certain demographic. Maybe moving volume just more efficiently, more effectively. And maybe it is battling your competitors and your competing brands that are on the same shelf as you, same retailers. Maybe that is a goal of yours. We also want to make sure that, for brands, when they're releasing new products, maybe we want that to be the star of the show for the moment. So that could definitely be one of the objectives that you have when talking about your brand. We also want to look at shoppers, and we want to think about, who they are and where they are. Does your target audience know about your products? Do they know about your brand? And if so, are they buying? And lastly, we have objectives that are catered more towards your retail partners. Is your product selling on a shelf, or is it highly demonstrable? Do you have to have a demo to kind of get sales going? What actually happens on site at your retail partners that kind of helps you reach these objectives and goals with your product? And Sarah, you have worked on the retail side of our business here at Inmar. What are some of the retailer-based objectives that a brand might run for a promotion?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot to think about here. Some of the obvious ones we have on the screen here, where you may have just gotten distribution at a retailer for the first time, and you have new products at the shelf at that specific retailer. So running promotions can certainly help to support your new distribution. And that really kind of hits on the third bullet that we have here, justifying to the retailer that that valuable shelf space that they've allocated to you is worth it. But keeping the products moving is certainly key. There's also some other reasons to think about, and I can think of a bunch of reasons why a brand may have a goal of driving shoppers to specific retailers. It could be that sales are down and your brand is at risk of losing shelf space, or maybe even sometimes entire distribution at retail. And so you might have a goal to move as much volume as possible. And then we also sometimes see where that a specific retailer is offering some kind of support or maybe even value to your brand. And in return, you must demonstrate that you're making every effort to drive traffic. So, some people may think that the motivation behind a promotion is purely based on brand needs or even shopper needs, but we've seen time and time again that just as easily your needs can be centered around your retailers.
That's exactly true, Sarah. And given all of this, you may be thinking to yourself, okay, that's all great, but all I need to do is put a coupon out there and it will hit all these goals and objectives, right? Not necessarily. And I don't want to say it's entirely wrong, but there's just a numerous amount of objectives that we mentioned here. There are numerous promotion types, numerous promotion variables, and numerous promotion stages that we need to consider and leverage properly. We'll touch all of those shortly, but first I want to quickly go back to the point about influencing shopper behavior. Sarah, we often hear people say things like, most coupon redemption is just subsidization. Am I just giving a discount to someone who was already going to buy my product? So is that true? Is it all just subsidization?
Well, no, I mean, it's not entirely true. And sure, there is plenty of subsidization that occurs, and that is hard in many cases to prevent with promotion methods. So, some more than others, of course. But even those where we can't control it, our studies do show that there is plenty of impact on shopper behavior. For example, we run surveys monthly and annually, and we talk to thousands of shoppers out there in the wild. And we aren't necessarily targeting coupon users specifically, just your regular old grocery shoppers. And among those shoppers, we ask if they do happen to use coupons. And if so, we ask them a lot of questions around that about how often they're using coupons, when they would use coupons, and even why. And in our recent studies, we've actually seen the following types of impact. We saw that 35% bought more than they usually would. This is often a goal for many brands, to train shoppers to buy more or to get them to load up, which could take them out of market for competitors or just get them used to buying higher quantities and training that behavior in them. Similarly, we observed 1 out of 4 bought sooner than anticipated. And if you're a brand that has a key timing need around purchase, this can be certainly a benefit. Perhaps if you have a product with a key seasonal time period and shoppers don't usually buy outside of that window, you and your competitors all kick into high gear at that time and everyone is scrambling to promote. But what if the right offer can get some shoppers to buy in advance of that period? You might be able to secure these shoppers and they won't be even considering or thinking about your competition because they've already stocked up on your product. And there are many reasons why a brand or retailers might want someone to buy sooner than they had planned to previously. We also saw that 31% said that they bought an alternative product within the brand that they plan to purchase. And if we look at this last one here, we observed that nearly 30% said that they bought a particular brand that they may not have otherwise purchased. So we do see a lot of trial and a lot of switching, which are two key goals of many brands, and it totally works. So it is important to understand that we aren't just subsidizing, and if done correctly, brands can likely achieve higher numbers than these with a well-planned offer.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Sarah. Like that's definitely all the points that I was thinking about as well. And there are more behavioral changes in these, but we wanted to just highlight a few examples. So let's move on to the next section. What do we got?
So in this section, we're really going to cover off on what does success look like. And Leo, I think this one, again, like many of the other sections we've previously covered, it seems and feels simple, or at least a lot of the brands that we work with seem to think so. Typically, a high redemption rate should equal success. Is that right?
Well, it's not necessarily wrong, but it's not necessarily the only measure either. And even if redemption rate is your measure of choice, how do you know if that's a good rate?
Right, that's a good point. And so when we're considering a promotion, brands really need to be asking themselves, how do I measure success? What key performance indicators should I set forth for my brand and our promotion strategies? And along with that, can I actually measure those things?
Yeah, definitely. Measurability matters, and setting realistic goals and expectations is equally important. And how can a brand do that?
Well, I think the first thing would really just be to understand what has worked and what hasn't worked in the past, and really digging into those historical trends.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a great place to start. Unless you have never run a promotion before, looking back at your own history is very valuable. What kind of promotions have you run and when did you run them? Where and how did you run them? What were all the variables? If so, the results of those offers may not be translatable. If you're going to run an offer on a single product for the first time, your results will likely be different in that case. So it's important to understand the details of your history and how it relates or doesn't relate to what you're trying to do now. And on the topic of history, you can also look at historical industry trends, something that Inmar publishes at various times throughout the year. And we tend to look at just, in general, average redemption rates, redemption share by promotion method or even tactic, average face values for different categories and different types of products. We also benchmark, with other product categories. And you want to look at that, with your competitors. Is there a big price gap? Are you a premium product versus a budget product? We also want to make sure that, there's other factors that we can look at in there, but we want to make sure that we have, control of our redemption drivers. And, sometimes we can control it, sometimes we can't. But it's also just important to understand these redemption drivers, because you want to make sure the ones you can control, you're in front of. And then the ones that you can't control, then maybe we can do some things, maybe we can't.
Right. So when we're thinking about promotions, we often talk about redemption drivers, things that can impact how our promotion will redeem. And Leo, what are some of the factors that are within our control?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a bunch, and we have some examples here. But for sure, our timing and our duration. So you can decide when you want to run your offers and for how long. I know standard is usually a month, but maybe you want to go longer than that, depending on your product and your category. We also control, face value and your purchase requirement. Do you want a high face value to drive trial? Do you want to move products so you do a buy one, get one, or buy two, get one? And you also control where your promotion runs. So like we touched earlier, if you're in a retailer that you're not selling, a whole bunch of your product, maybe that's a good place to run a promotion and see if we can get a sales lift from one of our campaigns. And we also control your creative elements, just the ad size, the number of coupons you're going to give out, where you send it. So all that is definitely under your control. And we want to make sure that, if you have the control, you do what is good for your brand. But Sarah, as mentioned, there are also things that we can't necessarily control, and that can also have an impact on how our offer redeems.
I mean, absolutely. There's some examples here where, these are the drivers that we have little control over. Obviously the economy and interest rates, that's outside of our control and that happening. But we can obviously plan promotions around it. And we know that when budgets at the shopper level are feeling more insecure, or folks have less spend throughout the week than they normally would, we know that coupons and savings are typically on the rise. So we do see that those factors sometimes mirror each other, and we see that a lot of those things are definitely in line with each other, but certainly outside of our control. The other thing, speaking of the shopper, even the shopper and the trends, I think those kind of go hand in hand of what's hot, what's not, what's trending on TikTok and social media. A lot of things can go viral, and it's hard to know what a shopper or what someone on social media is going to gravitate towards, but being prepared for those trends and making sure you have inventory to support them when they may happen is always super key. And then lastly, really the competition. I mean, it's certainly difficult to plan your promotions around what someone else is doing. It's nice to be aware of it, but it certainly should not be the only thing that's being contemplated when you're entering market with a promotion. So all of these different things are definitely things to consider, but just understanding, really focusing on the drivers Leo covered with what's in your control is where you're going to find the most success.
Right. And, what can you really measure, with all that being said? It really does depend on a bunch of things, effort, data, the type of method, and a few other factors. But at the most basic level, we can measure redemption rate and redemption units. It's pretty straightforward, but as we mentioned, you need to have something to benchmark those numbers against if you're trying to measure success, like prior history or industry trends, etc. Brands will also look at the total redemption costs and maybe compare against a budget, but those aren't the only costs that should be factored. Adding in distribution costs can make a big difference. So if you only look at redemption rate and redemption costs, you might find one promotion type move 3 times volume as another with twice the redemption costs. Maybe you'll consider that a success. But if you had to spend 10 times more in distribution costs to get 3 times the volume, you may not view that as a success. So we like to factor in all the costs of each promotion and then look at things like cost per unit moved. If improving efficiency is a key goal, then understanding CPUM can be really helpful. Similarly, it may tell you things that redemption alone can't. You may have one tactic that costs a lot more than another, but the CPUM is actually better, meaning that if affordable, that may be the way to go. And it can also help you think about the cost to move a unit versus your margins on that particular unit. From there, it starts to get just a little more complicated. Incrementality can be difficult to measure, especially for more traditional offer types whose redemption data is not tied directly to a specific shopper. Those methods may require some complicated analysis or assumptions, in order to just gauge the incrementality or other shopper-related measures. With digital offers, you may or can get closer and look at things like different buyer types who responded. And of course, you can try to look at ROI, which requires more specific brand data. Sometimes we're asked to help with ROI, but brands are often sensitive about sharing their margins or other financial information, obviously for competitive reasons. But the point is that you can work towards an ROI calculation if you have the right data and information at hand. And of course, you can also look at your overall sales volume during the promotion. If you have your Nielsen or if you have IRI data, we know that there will be some people who see a promotion, maybe even clip it, but then make a purchase without redeeming. So there is an advertising factor as well. Additionally, you may have a shopper who redeems a coupon good on a single purchase, but decides to bulk up and buys 2 or 3 products. So the coupon may have led to more volume than just what the redemption units tell you. So you can try to analyze overall sales volume during the life cycle of the offer and make some assumptions or conclusions based off that. Some of this stuff can get really tricky and there isn't always an exact science to it, but just wanted to illustrate some of the links that you can go to in an attempt to figure out what your promotion accomplished in the time you had it. So let's move on and see what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. In this next section, this one's a fun one, and it's something that we're often asked. Which promotion method makes the most sense?
Yeah, I like this one because there's so much to think about. So let's just roll right into this one.
Absolutely. And these number of variables that can often influence the direction you should decide to go in. So Leo, the first one seems a little too obvious, where it says budget constraints. So obviously budget is going to have an impact on our promotion.
Yes. So yeah, it is obvious. The more budget you have, the more you can put into a promotion, right? But just knowing how much you have to spend can immediately help narrow down your options. If you have $10,000 to spend, you're going to have a very different, campaign available to you than if you have $100,000 to spend, or even $1 million to spend. I mean, brands need to be realistic from the get-go in terms of what they are or are not going to be able to do with their given budget. And Sarah, calling on your retail background again, retail support needs have to be considered, right?
Yeah, certainly. They definitely do. And if a brand doesn't have any specific retailer needs, then they can run whatever types of offers that they want. But if there is a need to support a specific retailer, and we touched on some reasons why earlier, then the choice of method becomes a little bit more focused. Brands may want to choose an offer type that is distributed specifically inside the stores of a given retailer, maybe even sync up to a digital program that runs directly with that retailer. And that doesn't mean that the brand has to only run those offer types, but there is a specific retail need and special considerations that you need to take into account. And you certainly need to be thinking about as you're planning your entire promotional mix.
Yeah, and agility to execute is also important. If you need to run a promotion next Thanksgiving, you have plenty of time to figure out what method and get it planned and, ultimately executed. But what if you suddenly have a need to run a promotion 2 months from now? Some method types may not be possible in that time frame. If you want to run an instant redeemable offer on your product in store, you need to get coupons printed. Then you have to get them either to a factory, distribution center, or even to products already in the store. And then you have to get them applied to the product. So there may not be enough time for that. And different publishers and providers will have different timing constraints on when things need to be locked in. So that's also something that you need to think about. And the ability or need to just adjust the offer while it's already in market, or even just last minute. All these things can make a difference on what method makes sense for your brand. The last two items on this slide will be easier with some visuals. So let's just hop on over to the next slide. So depending on where you are on this page, or perhaps you're in multiple places on this page, so this can direct you towards what type of promotion you are trying to run, and choosing between a mass promotion or a more targeted one-to-one promotion, and everything in between. So this ties back directly to some of the goals we talked about in the first section. If your overall goal is awareness, then getting the most distribution and impressions is likely your goal and objective. In this case, choosing methods that are broad reaching will be important. But think about repeat purchase or loyalty. You can certainly hit on these with mass promotions, but if there are absolute key goals for you, then you need to move to something more targeted, where the shopper seeing your offer fits this criteria, and that you may even have the ability to see if he or she redeems the offer. So you can do some or all these things with methods like electronic checkout, digital coupons, and a few others. But finally, let's move on to the one I kind of like talking about. Sarah, can you take us through the shopper phases?
Absolutely. This is a fun one. So the shopper journey really starts even before a shopper steps their foot into a store, or even gets online digitally if they're doing their grocery shopping, either pick up in store, or if they're doing delivery. It really starts with getting their attention in the pre-shop phase. So what you guys can really ask yourself is, how can you make it on that grocery list this week? So some popular methods to think about are the freestanding insert, direct mailer, or even engaging with shoppers through social media and influence channels like with Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And so now, once we're inside the store or at the digital storefront, how do we break through the noise in that online gallery or on that shelf space? Some great tactics to consider once you're in the store are handouts, instant redeemables, and tier pads. And then once we've checked out, the shopper journey is still not over. How we can continue to engage the shopper after they left the store. Tactics to consider here are Catalina coupons, in-pack, and on-pack offers. And the last phase is actually one that can be really deployed at any phase in the shopper journey. Inmar has a lot of experience getting brands synced up with retailers' loyalty programs. So if that is of interest to you, we'd love to help you on that journey if you're interested in dipping a toe in digital incentives. Leo, it really feels like understanding these phases can be critical in many cases.
Yes, so absolutely. An example to kind of illustrate this was, some work that our Inmar team did with the brand a few weeks back. They were wondering why performance of many of their offers were so low. We took a look, and everything seemed fine with how they were executing the offers. The values and the purchase requirements were appropriate. There was nothing wrong with their timing or anything else that we could see in the data. So we started digging in to the brand and their shopper. Eventually the brand revealed that the bulk of their shoppers buy on impulse. Shoppers made the decision to buy while in store, and very few shoppers were making planned purchases. Bingo. So this brand was focused on pre-shop promotion methods, but hadn't connected the dots. So, and this is why I like talking about our shopper journey and the phases that we go through as shoppers, because when I go to my store, and I'm down in Texas, so I go to H-E-B, When I go down the dog aisle and I look for treats for my dog, I'm instantly looking, and I'm already been trained by HEB to see out these yellow coupons that they have hanging around. And whatever treat is on sale that week, that's what my dogs are going to get for the next month. And most of the time they like all the treats, so it really doesn't matter from my perspective. So I definitely don't plan to purchase a certain brand. I walk in there, and if I see a coupon, that's definitely what I'm going to get my dogs. So sorry to my dogs, but they're just getting the discounted treats here. But definitely thinking about who your shopper is and where you need to reach them during the shopper phase is super critical. But yeah, Sarah, what do you have next?
Yeah, absolutely. So up next, what we have is really thinking about how much an offer should be worth and really thinking about the coupon value.
Gotcha. Yeah. So there isn't necessarily a rule or an exact method to determine the best value or purchase requirement because there are just so many variables and factors. But there are definitely things you should be thinking about and considering. So there are a lot of factors that are going to influence the value of your offer. A new item versus an established one, an aggressive offer over, an efficient one. Many of the things we have already talked about today are going to influence the level of discount you need to offer. But when thinking about offers and values, and this also relates to the frequency of offers, one thing to be careful about is not eroding your brand equity. So what does that mean exactly, though?
Yes, and I'll step in here and give just a little example. And I don't want to upset anyone from these companies who might be listening or have joined us today. This is purely an example. It's not a professional point of view on these companies, and it's definitely not legal advice per our disclaimer. But often when you're in your retail store, and often when we're talking about eroding brand equity, it is about providing too much of a discount or promoting too often. So the example that I wanted to share is in the soda category. And you guys know there's two big players. There's Coke and Pepsi, and one or the other is typically going to be on sale almost weekly. And because of this, we'll see that some shoppers may refuse to pay full price because they know that it's going to be on sale within a week or so. And they're really used to only paying that discounted price. So if you think about it, the perceived value of those products is actually the sale price. And it's not really that full price. So over time, they might have eroded really the price and the equity because the soda shopper is just really trained to only get it on sale. So another key consideration needs to be the price at the shelf at the time of promotion. So trade stacking can have a massive impact on a promotion, and it has the ability sometimes to blow a budget or maybe even give a deeper discount than you had intended. So really proper alignment with trade is extremely critical. And of course, that there are other stacking opportunities to be mindful of as well with other promotions companies like Ibotta and Fetch Rewards. So one of the things to figure out is what is your true net cost, and then adjust your promotion and value based on those needs. So Leo, can you take us through a few points to really illustrate and drive home this concept of net unit cost?
Sure, yeah. And we have 4 points to think about when determining the net unit cost. And the first one is your non-promoted price, right? So this is, regular everyday price of your product. And there's, not a coupon, not an incentive, no discount. Then we also want to look at your promoted price. So does the product have maybe a temporary price reduction with a discount at the retailer specifically? So that's what we want to look at. And then next would be your consumer promotion price. So this is going to be your manufacturer coupon, digital or maybe a traditional paper handout, instant redeemable, something on pack, something they get from their newspaper. And that can be used in conjunction with the promoted price that I just mentioned to drive even more savings. So definitely the shopper wins here. They get, their promoted price, a temporary price reduction, plus the manufacturer coupon. And then lastly is your net unit cost. So the total discount of your promoted price plus the consumer promotion paid by the shopper at time of purchase. And, sometimes it can be a lot, sometimes these couponers can figure it out. But Sarah, will you share an example that kind of makes this a little more real?
Yes, absolutely. So follow me with this. So let's just start with, let's say we have a $5 product, okay? So we decided that we're going to offer a 20% discount in this scenario. And that's a pretty basic discount rate that most brands use as a starting point. So we see that fairly regularly. So that would mean that we were giving $1 off discount and the customer would be paying $4 for the product. It seems reasonable, I think. It's really not too aggressive, but it might not be enough to get a reaction. So let's say that we weren't paying attention and we didn't realize that there were going to be a trade deal going on during the life of our coupon. And so that price was actually then reduced to $2.99. So if a shopper uses our coupon during that time, they are now paying $1.99 for our $5 product. My question is that okay? And really, I can't answer that for your particular brand here, but there are a lot of variables to think about. If the price point kills your margin, that may not be a good thing, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And then to further complicate things, what if there is something running on one or more of the cashback apps? So maybe you have 50 cents running on one of those. So now the shopper's paying $1.49. And again, these are instances where you might want this and others may not. But when you think about most shoppers, many of them are going to figure this out. The savvy coupon shoppers certainly will figure this out, and they will post it on blogs and they will repost it on Facebook and all of the social channels, and they'll get a large following around this promotion. So what you'll see is that these stacking opportunities are extremely real and to be mindful of them. So it's extremely important to think through not just what the value of your coupon should be, but also what else can be added on top of that. A couple of other quick conversations when it comes to setting values. It's certainly beneficial to not only know your promoted and non-promoted price, but also those of your competitors and potentially by market or region. If you have a market where your non-promoted everyday price is already lower than your competitor's promoted price, you may not really need to offer that much of a rich discount. So knowing your various price points and your competitors can help you adjust and tailor your values and those purchase requirements by market, along with other data points such as BDI, CDI, et cetera. And then the last point that I really want to drive home is I had previously mentioned the purchase requirement. And this is directly related to the coupon value. In our original example, we were wanting to give that 20% discount on a $5 product, so it ended up being $1 off. But if we change the coupon to an off 2, it's no longer a 20% discount. I have seen countless brands make the mistake of not thinking this through. So they think that $1 for 2 makes sense because then they're trying to get more people to stock up. But they don't really think about the fact that you're asking a shopper to buy $10 worth of a product in order to save just $1, which is really only a 10% discount. So really depending on what your goals are and also the shoppers you're targeting, this could easily fail. This may seem obvious, but in something that certainly can get overlooked. So when balancing your face value with a multi-purchase offer, just be sure to consider how much money you're asking your shopper to spend in order to earn that discount, and then ask yourself, do you think it's going to be worth it to them? Okay, so that probably is enough about values, and I think we've got one section left here. So now that we've talked about why we're running a coupon, how to measure it, what methods and tactics to enter the market with, and also thinking about how to set those values, when should we run this offer?
Yeah, another just important question. And once again, a little bit complex as there are a lot of factors. In some cases, you may not have any specific timing needs in mind. You just need to promote, and maybe as soon as possible. But there are still some things you should consider. And then there are other instances where it may make sense to align with certain things. So let's talk through some of them. So here are a few things to think about. First, do you have key sales or drive periods that you want to or should align with? I work with one brand that has key periods during the year where they absolutely must move as much volume as possible. And so they almost always align their coupon promotions with those periods. Intentionally having then stack with, trade promotions and in market during heavier marketing and advertising efforts. This goes back to what we have just talked about with setting values. Seasonality can also be really important. If you are selling products that are consumed year round, perhaps with little seasonality, like coffee, bread, or dish soap, you may be able to run promotions anytime throughout the year with success. But what if you have seasonal swings, or if you are extremely seasonal, then your timing may be critical. This is a silly example, but if you are selling ice melting crystals, a coupon good on multiple purchase in the middle of July is probably not going to do much. You probably want to run your promotions heading into winter or in the dead of winter, but you may also be justified to run outside your season swings. Ice cream and frozen pops probably sell more in the summer, and a brand will likely have great success promoting in that time period. But it's also a product that people do consume year round, and brands can run offers to try to, stimulate sales outside of the normal seasonal window. And finally, you likely are running promotions in some way, shape, or form as a result of competition. And I hate to bring up competitors all the time, but you definitely have to stay on top of things, because just knowing things about your competitors can also help with the success of your offer. And, like I said, we want to make sure that we're coordinating with our trade deals and our, temporary price reductions. We want to be holistic in this process. We have to take into account your seasonality, and it's very different from category to category. And again, they're competitors. So do we have their data? Do we know how they're selling? Do we know when they're running their promotions? Just, a lot of things to think about in your timing and where you want to be in the marketplace with your offers. But okay, Sarah, why don't you take us to the last slide?
Absolutely. So just like a brand may have seasonality, there's also some seasonality where we look at the overall industry's trends for distribution and redemption. Here we are showing a monthly index of each in total, and we've also broken them out between food and non-food categories. And you can see that there are some definite patterns and peaks and valleys throughout the year.
Yeah, and you're right. So if you have no brand history promotions, or even if you do, you can compare against industry trends to take a look at norms and factor that into your decision about when you want to run the offer. But you want to make sure that you're at least tracking this information, and you want to see how your brand is comparing to, the industry trends, again, to your competitor. Just always have something to benchmark your data with and benchmark it against those numbers. But that's probably the extent to what I can offer as legal advice. We've reached the end to our legal advice. Oh, I'm sorry. This is not legal advice. I forgot. No legal advice here. But definitely the end of our advice.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leo. So we've definitely covered a lot of stuff, and I just want to recap some of the takeaways from each section here, just to put a bow on it. So when we think about why we're running the promotion, we need to think about our objectives, and oftentimes it's easy to think about your own goals and even the shoppers, but definitely don't forget about the retailers if they have special programs that they want you to be a part of and things like that. Also follow the data and see what are the shoppers responding to. If you have anything historical that you can look at, maybe you're brand new, you can also look at other competitors and maybe tap into how tactics perform and how shoppers respond in other categories that are very similar to your own. Also thinking about what success looks like, setting realistic expectations, focusing on what's within your control, and then the devil is definitely in the economics. So looking into those nitty-gritty details is key. Asking yourself what promotion method you should enter market with is extremely critical. And here you want to consider all the variables. You also want to think about mass merchandise versus one-on-one targeting. We know that digital, if you're looking for one-to-one targeting, is really key for that. And then also just making sure that you're approaching the shopper journey at each phase and understanding that, it's always going to make this full circle. So not just being in the store, but also getting on the grocery list and then being there post shop as well is extremely critical. And then also thinking about how much the offer should be worth, knowing what your net unit cost is that you're comfortable with, adjusting based on your specific goals for the year or even seasonally. And then really just being aware of not eroding your overall brand equity. And then lastly, we covered really the best time to publish an offer, and timing is everything. So thinking about what Leo covered off on of, knowing competition windows, knowing how sometimes to be a little bit early so that folks stock up on your product and takes them out of contention with them stocking up on a competitor. These are all key things to consider when you're running a promotion. So we sincerely just wanted to thank you so much for spending time with us today. We would love to continue the conversation. So we want you to feel comfortable to reach out to us with any questions that you might have, even if they're extremely tailored and specific to your brand, we would welcome them, and we're always happy to help.
Yeah, and don't hesitate to just give me a call on my cell phone. It's here on the screen. I know we always think of a bunch of questions after we log off a Zoom call. So if you think of anything right after you log off of here, just shoot me an email, give me a call. You can text me. That's not a problem. And, as we said, there's a lot of little factors and variables that we have to consider. So definitely we would love to, meet with you, learn a little bit more about your brand, and answer any questions that you may have.
Absolutely. And if you have any colleagues that wanted to join us today and had meeting conflicts and couldn't, we do have another scheduled webinar on November the 9th at the same time of 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So feel free to share this webinar with any colleagues or any friends. We'd love for them to join us. And again, we thank you so much for spending the time with us.